Section 5. I've explained introduction to blockchain use case, where we covered the introduction and categories of blockchain use cases. This is what we spoke about. That we have various categories starting from section 6, that is the government public sector, fintech domain, manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, services domain, and a category of miscellaneous use cases. Now we thought that we should spend some time and give you an extensive overview about all the use cases which are possible, but not limited to what we have mentioned here. So in this section 6, we will focus on the government or the public sector use cases. In this section, we shall briefly start with an introduction, followed by identity management use case, law enforcement, defense, legal, smart cities, public transportation, environment, cybersecurity, and about firearms. So, first, lecture 17, a brief introduction about the government use cases. As you are aware today, the governments are focused on facilitating transparency in terms of governance, distribution of resources, and also achieving efficiency among all the processes which they interact with in terms of within the country and also across with different countries across the borders. So, blockchain applications in the government sector may help the government to become fully digitalized and also help in facilitating transparency and accountability. So it's not only the industry sector which is looking at the government use cases, and hence we started the use cases entire briefing first with the government and public sector use cases. And as you're aware, why in the government? Because government has a lot of personal data of millions of people which has to be stored in a permanent manner on a digital platform. Since we say that with blockchain hashing and cryptography, blockchain is unhackable or impossible to hack, blockchain can help in storing all this data in a permanent manner. So, let's see basically the role of blockchain in the government sector. First, the core features of blockchain which can help the government to maintain the data in an immutable and a permanent manner. The first point is shared ledger. Now with the shared ledger, various departments across the government and also among different countries can access the same shared ledger and they can update as and when needed. Once the data is put into the shared ledger, it will always be available to the concerned parties. Now with the concept of shared ledger, you also have multi-party access and even access level can be controlled. So you don't need to have everybody, it's not always complete public, part public and part private can be maintained. So for example, when you want to share data across different parts of the government bodies, you can decide what part of the data can be shared. Then it is very good in terms of a low trust environment. Now very often you may not want other departments to know what is happening in your how the data is stored in your department. So low trust can be maintained with the help of a blockchain. Also another advantage is auditability is possible in the blockchain. That means since the records are immutable, you can always go back and look at any data, and you can also ensure that compliance is always achieved while the government processes are being followed. Now with the data on the blockchain, there is no need for third party or intermediaries to be involved in actually settling transactions or helping in documentation or entry of manual records. Because no intermediaries are there, there are chances of fraud which can be decreased. Fake or bogus documents introduction into the system can be decreased, and the cost which is borne by the person involved or the customer will also be decreased to zero because no intermediaries will be required. Apart from that, with smart contracts, you can have easier settlement of transactions happening in an automated manner. So physical interaction or multiple different clicks may not be required. So with the rules written down in the smart contract, it is possible to execute transactions instantaneously and ensure that the payments are made to the corresponding bodies in an immediate manner. So with these good features of blockchain, it stands a it will play an integral role in how the data will be stored and accessed in the government sector. There are other value added features of blockchain which are basically going to help in enhancing the you adoption of blockchain. So the first one is building trust with citizens. Now, typically, always you'll find that very often there's a lot of distrust for the citizens from the citizen side for the government, and the reasons may be multiple. But this trend can be reversed with the help of a blockchain, because blockchain brings in transparency because of decentralization. So the participating parties can actually verify the data, and they can check whether it is and the government claims can be verified. So countries like Estonia, Sweden, Georgia have been working on blockchain based land registry where multiple parties are involved, and the disputes of registries can be resolved because the data is available in an immutable manner and the records are permanently stored, so the distrust is decreased. Another example is how to protect protection of sensitive data. Now, we say that my data is personal and it is private. Now, how do we ensure that the information given to the government will be stored in a secured manner? So, the sensitive data of people, like the security number, like in India we have the Aadhaar card. Then for the accounting, it is the PAN card. Then the birth dates, addresses, driver's license, and so on. All these entities can be stored with a digital identity on the blockchain, and once it is on the blockchain, it is not possible to immediately hack or replace the data, because the same data and the records is available with multiple parties. So the single point of failure can be avoided, and breaches can be prohibited. Another value added feature of using blockchain in the government sector is looking at reducing costs and improving efficiency. Reducing costs in terms of involving third parties in carrying out activities, and with data being available across all departments through the blockchain, multiple redundant records are not required. So the processes are streamlined. There is no audit burden. There is an increased security and integrity because the same data is at every place. So reconciliation is easier. So the system efficiency can be improved, and the intermittent costs of copying data or checking or manual inspections can be reduced to zero. So typically in systems where you want to do intra-governmental transfers or of information or funds, it becomes very easy through the blockchain, and thus we can reduce the costs and improve the efficiency. So this was basically regarding how the core features and the value-added features of blockchain can help to play an important role in the government sector. Now in the next slide, we shall look at various categorizations of the government sector use cases. This is only a very brief idea. So typically as I told earlier, that lots of countries are looking at digitizing all the data on the blockchain, and with the national blockchain framework available, it is possible to have various sections in mind, where one we can have is interactions between the government to the citizens, that is the G2C category, where land records and ownership of information like title deeds can be put on the blockchain. Now, with then there could be subsidies and benefits distribution, like like India has got various schemes like the Prime Minister's scheme and the Disaster Release Fund and the Prime Minister's Pension Fund and so on, and there are many schemes floated by the government in terms of subsidies and benefits to the citizens. So these all can be floated through the blockchain. Various civic and public works department services of the different parts of the government can make use of the blockchain to ensure that their information is on the blockchain and available to everybody and transparency is there. Also for the G2C section, voting and national identity data can be maintained on the blockchain. So accountability and transparency can be brought in, and the data will be available to everybody. So there'll be no corruption or inefficiency, and mission statements and all can be clearly defined through the blockchain and percolated to every citizen of the country. So after looking at the G2C category, we have another category, that is the government to business category. Now, as you can understand from the term government to business category, we are looking at the initiatives from the government for the business sector. And obviously, both always exist hand in hand, because the government businesses have to interact with the government for carrying out legitimate acts, and business transactions have to go through various processes for and on the other hand, for the government it's a benefit because business is going to enhance the economic level of the country. And so various activities in the government to business sector can be streamlining and simplifying business registrations, like registering a company and various other activities, limited company, etc., or maybe funding, etc., all can be streamlined and simplified without the use of third parties through the blockchain. Then tax and dues collection can be automated through the blockchain, so and can be done on a direct manner, so the payments can be transferred auto pay with a smart contract. Procurement and supply chain in the government sector, where government sector departments are going to buy either equipment or assets from the businesses, then that procurement process, because it goes through a very stringent tendering process. Now this tendering and the procurement processes through the supply chain, even up to logistics and supply and distribution, can be carried out on the blockchain. I'll be speaking more about the supply chain in the manufacturing sector use cases. Intellectual property and copyrights can be protected on the blockchain, because once they are stored and permanently available, there will be transparency, and that will be a permanent store. Then you have another category, that is business to customer, which also can benefit from the blockchain. So when you talk about business to consumer, consumers always want security and a good quality of service, and they want to ensure that their personal details will never be compromised. With businesses working on blockchain, the businesses can ensure that the consumer data is put on the blockchain and stored in an immutable manner, so that breaches can be avoided and trust can be maintained. And examples of B2C use cases could be something like logistics, tracking and security of the supply chain, food safety, utility services, and even games. Many of these applications I'm going to talk about in the further lectures. Then the other category is business to business, where basically you may have businesses which depend on other businesses to either build a product or an equipment, or even get a demand for a service. Now, there are various processes which exist when the B2B businesses happen, and these processes can be, or transactions can be ported onto the blockchain, and examples could be data sharing and real-time visibility of the required information. Business supply chain can be smoothened and made efficient with the help of smart contracts, and transactions can be done in real time. Transactions and revenue settlements can also be done on the blockchain, so that with smart contracts everything can be automated. So you don't need to have reminders and processes put in place to actually carry out a revenue settlement in a later period of time. So this was basically regarding the various ways in which we can categorize the government use cases. Then we can look at the next set of activities in terms of the actual use cases, and then we'll take briefly a few of them. We can have something called as, we are saying that government will employ blockchain technology, but how? It has to come out with, earlier traditional document storage practices which were manual in nature. It has to come out of fragmentation and silos among government for the data. It has to have more security in terms of how it is maintaining the data. And it should also focus on long-term technology inculcation into the everyday practices. So, a few examples of use cases from the government sector. The first one is decentralized voting. So, we always say that voter frauds have always been a normal thing in most of the countries. And there has been a strong support for increasing transparency in the elections process. So, election process has to be insulated or brought away from the influence of the fraudsters, maybe from the same or the other country, and maybe from the opposite parties. And to get greater participation from the government, it is possible to create immutable records on the blockchain and ensure that there is no redundancy of data. So the election process can be carried out through the blockchain. Votem, Democracy Earth, and Follow My Vote are basically working on preparing a voting platform on blockchain. You can also have another use case in the government sector, which is exploiting the shared service model. So, what exactly you mean by shared service? Typically, you have services which are offered by a particular company, and then people can avail of the services. Though with the type of the services which are improving or increasing on a day-to-day basis, we would like to have services which are shared. So, something like businesses like IT, HR, accounting, payroll, security, compliance. All of them together are for an organization. But what if these services are available on the blockchain? So the shared services model will benefit in the long run with sharing of data. So a US agency, General Services Administration, is working on providing such a explored shared service for agencies and even for citizens. So if as an individual I want to have a service for say security and compliance or accounting for myself, I could log on to this blockchain based model, ensure that my data is immutably and securely stored, and I can avail of that service on a pay basis. Then the other use case is moving from paper to digital based system. This, as you are aware, it is very important that we are moving from we are going from paper based systems into the digital system, and you know the advantages of digital: removing redundancy, making things permanent, making things available every time at the click of a button, so the paperwork can be reduced to zero. The additional benefit of reducing paperwork to zero and moving into digital form is going to be uh, you know um, a strong drive towards ensuring that papers cannot be replaced, papers cannot be lost, and frauds can be brought down to zero. Another use case in the blockchain for the government would be welfare distribution. And as you are aware, typically when any disasters occur and the government releases funds, it has to be done in a transparent manner and it should be given to the correct person. Very often, illegitimate claims are made with fraudsters, and fake documents are submitted to get the advantage of the welfare. So the welfare funds can be misused in that way. Now, with the information of the whole welfare funds and the process carried out on the blockchain, starting from the registration to verification of documents to the payment of the data, then transparency can be there, plus the service can be fast, and citizens can actually benefit directly instead of the third party picking up the picking up the amounts in between. And the true people will get the benefit of this data. So after looking at these use cases, we have another set of few use cases which talk about, first one, the customer and the border patrol records. Now these are very crucial in terms of countries to maintain their security, and there's a lot of amount of people and goods which actually flow through the borders, and there is a very urgent need to ensure that customs activities among various countries happen in a transparent manner. So if you have at one point you have somebody who's corrupt, and it's possible to the possible for the particular activities to ensure that some harm can happen to the nation or to the people involved. So the customer and the border control patrol records could either be on the land or on the water, or maybe for the air, that is at the airports. And blockchain in this area will definitely help, because the we can have information about the origin and the legitimacy of the shipments, and we can know real time information about how that particular shipment is flowing through, and which custom agent was involved in actually approving that particular shipment. Now, at this level, if we can go up to monitoring of the shipments across the borders, or maybe even transfer of people, then it is possible to control the type of type of illegal activities which happen at the borders. Then it's also possible to have focus on secure data entry, in terms of every entry which is put into the system, it can be double checked only then put into the system, and real time detection of breaches can be put in place. Sensitive data can be controlled in a strong manner and only then put on the blockchain. So for example, it is very easy here to monitor the duplication of data, and duplication can be avoided. So you can't have impersonation of people or impersonation of any documents or misplacing of any documents for any illegitimate purpose. We can also have transparency through blockchain, and thus we can reduce corruption. And as you are aware that corruption occurs when there is a freedom of documents flowing through, and you don't know what is where. So if you are able to control the, you have one place for storage of data, the unified storage, the copies available with every authority, and nobody else can alter anything in the particular data, then it is possible to introduce transparency and also reduce corruption. So illegal activities like illegal confiscations of information, or frauds happening can be avoided and brought down to zero. There are various companies working in this sector. And then we have transparency also in budgeting. Budgeting plays a very important role in the government in terms of the economic growth of the government, as well as the prosperity of the country and the economic status of the government. So very often a lot of money is wasted in terms of maintenance of records, as well as a lot of other processes which actually could be automated. So to reduce the waste of these type of funds and improve efficiency of the system, when then the financial data of every country is on the blockchain, then public servants become accountable for that data, and transparency can be brought into the budgeting field. National Research Council of Canada is working on an ethereum based blockchain to increase transparency in government contracts. Another use case is intra-agency data management. Now, typically speaking, in every country earlier, the data was in silos, and if one department of the government wanted to interact with the other department, manual flow of data had to be done, or even through an ERP, you need to move the data, and it's possible that the same ID'd person, suppose, would have two different informations on two different departments' data if there was some fraud or misuse carried out. So these bureaucratic processes which take a long time, because the sharing of data is not there in a smooth manner, can be avoided using intra-agency data management on the blockchain. This could also reduce the communication among the departments, data breaches can be avoided, data loss can be avoided. Even training costs can be decreased because you pick up the data from one place. Administrative costs are decreased, and you have one single place of data storage, and then government spending, which is happening in different ways, can be reduced. NASA basically has put out a grant for blockchain based computing networks across locations. So intra-agency data management is one thing which is really going to benefit in the government sector. National digital currency is another aspect or a use case of the blockchain, where we speak about the ensuring that the information on the blockchain is available. So for example, in India we have the government has decided not to encourage cryptocurrency, but in Venezuela they have announced that its national currency can also try out the digital currency, that is cryptocurrency. So, Tunisia, Senegal, Venezuela, and even Marshall Islands have all issued digital currencies. So, it depends on individual agencies what are they planning in countries if they want to include digital currency. And for digital currency, the best place to store the data is blockchain. The other use case in the government sector is, as we looked at, for the corruption. So overall, with data being secure, not not replaceable, we can prevent frauds in the government sector. Now let's look at, in India, what are the various how a government is deploying blockchain in various parts of the states. So around 50% of the states in India are involved in blockchain related initiatives, as you can see here. So the public sector is also driving the blockchain adoption across the country. So with the various states which are shown in the figure, many of them are working on land registry, farm insurance, and even digital certificates. This source is from NASCOM. States like Andhra Pradesh is working on blockchain database, cyber security, healthcare, land registry, even vehicle transfer title registration. In Assam, the focus is on public service delivery, while in Telangana, land registry, chit funds operations, microfinance for small housing groups, digital education certificates. In Goa, it is the land registry, while in Delhi, it is monitoring the growth and maintenance. Then, and even maintenance of basically of saplings and plants make the area more environment friendly and green. In Rajasthan, electronic health records and land registry. In Maharashtra, land registry, digital certifications, organ transplants, rationing distribution, and farm insurance. You know what is rationing distribution? If you are actually from not India, then you may not be aware that in India, government has got a rationing system where there are government-based shops which actually subsidize food items like sugar, kerosene, which is used for fuel for the stoves, and wheat and rice. So very at a very subsidized rate is provided to the poor people of the country based below a particular financial level. So rationing distribution is possible on the blockchain, and even farm insurance. Then there are other states like Gujarat, which is working on fertilizer subsidy management and e-governance. Karnataka on agricultural digital certificates, forest and land acquisition, public service delivery, idea marketplace. Now, typically speaking, ideas basically, I have an idea. I don't know. I'm actually, like maybe I'm a novice. I just have an idea and I keep it to myself. Maybe I pick up an idea and I implement it, but I don't know how to commercialize it. So Karnataka is working on providing an idea marketplace where the ideas are available, and there are people who can fund it or encourage startups or the commercial ventures for these ideas. Karnataka is also working on IP protection. Tamil Nadu is working on agricultural, healthcare, and education. Uttar Pradesh is working on land registry, power sharing. Power sharing will be focusing on in the energy sector. Kerala is working on farm insurance, agricultural supply chain. Madhya Pradesh on land registry. West Bengal on land registration, duty payments, records management, cyber security, digital birth certificates, and even data management of the state. Now, let us see the blockchain government initiatives across the world. And as you are aware, I'm from India, but I wouldn't just like to focus on India and only give what is happening in India. So here, a few examples of initiatives of blockchain-based government projects across the world. So in Canada, Toronto Stock Exchange is working for financial services. In USA, the Federal Reserve is working on a blockchain-based digital currency with IBM. It is working on the blockchain-based hyperledger platform. In Mexico, the Bank of Mexico is working to create a digital version of peso. that is their national currency. Honduras is working on government and factum, a land title record system. Then in UK, PwC partners are working on blockchain and Eris Industries for functional institutions. In France, Alliance is exploring FinTech Accelerator Program. We'll be talking about FinTech use cases in the next sector. In Ukraine, government is working on an Ethereum blockchain based election platform. In European Union, the European Central Bank is working on payments, security settlement and collateral on blockchain. In Russia, the central bank is working on finance use cases. In South Korea, the stock exchange is developing a blockchain trading platform for off-board dealers. Then in China, Alibaba is exporting blockchain for cloud service and fighting counterfeit products. People's Bank of China is weighing blockchain for digital currency. In Hong Kong, the Monetary Authority is working on crypto to make its financial services safer and cheaper. And in Dubai, the government is establishing a blockchain council to promote technology. Monetary Authority of Singapore is working on fintech and blockchain innovations. The DBS and the SCB, our banks, are launching trade finance proof of concept using Ripple technology. So as you can see over here, we have projects which are based on Hyperledger, Ethereum, Ripple, and most of them are working on a variety of use cases across the world. These are only a few which I have cited, but there are many more. So for example, Nigeria is working on regulating Bitcoin and Moneto exchanges and gateways on blockchain. In Australia, the Australian Stock Exchange equity settlement systems and financial services. So with this variety of use cases across the world, we have provided a brief introduction about the government use cases, where initially we spoke about the main aspects of the government, how features of the blockchain, the basic features and the extra features can help the government to use blockchain. Then we talked about the various categories of use cases in terms of the business and customers and the government. Then we spoke about various use cases, then initiatives across India, initiatives across the world. And now in the next section, we will focus on identity management.